5 Sports. Scott Wright of the Daily Oklahoman joins us now, and he covers Oklahoma State. Scott, Alan Bowman is back for a 7th year in college football and another year with the Pokes. I did a video, just a short video, like an off-season recap, and I had foolishly assumed that Alan Bowman was just going to be done because he'd been playing for 6 years and moving on, and he got the waiver and came back. This is obviously plan A at quarterback for Oklahoma State. Is this the ideal situation for them, or was this just what they felt most comfortable with?
You look at what they're bringing back on this team, and particularly on offense. This is really, I think, the ideal scenario. Now, there are a lot of fans, just like there are at every program, who always think the backup quarterback or want to see what the young guy has, whichever hotshot recruit is next in line. And there are those people at Oklahoma State right now, but with a couple of exceptions, almost all the offensive line is back. And then you got a defense that's got a lot of returning starters and going to be making progress in Brian Nardo's second year as coordinator. This is a team that feels like they've got enough talent and enough experience to go and compete for a Big 12 title again next year and really be a better team than they were this season. So when you factor all of that in, being able to put a really solid and reliable player at the quarterback position, he's not flashy. He'll put up some big numbers from time to time, and he threw a few more interceptions than people would like with 14 in 14 games, but he's a really solid guy, a great leader for this team, and a really valuable asset in that quarterback position. Even if he's not going to go set the world on fire or make a ton of crazy throws or those sorts of things, he's just a guy that they can rely on and they know can run the offense the way it needs to be done on Saturdays.
Scott, what are your thoughts on the defensive side? Guys like Colin Oliver, Kendall Daniels coming back as well. I mean, it seems like they're, to your point, just kind of in general talking about everybody being back in the fold. But what does that mean for Brian Nardo and company and just getting into the groove defensively heading into next year?
Yeah, it's really big. We always hear coaches talk about players and the growth that they make from year one to year two. And I think we're going to see that with Brian Nardo as a defensive coordinator. He's been a coordinator for several years, but all at the Division II level. So after this year now, he has some, he's a very introspective guy, a guy that really enjoys self-scouting, and he is going to be locked in the film room, understanding where offenses were trying to attack him and where his breakdowns were in how he coordinated this defense for his first year at the Division I level. Now, then you add in, you mentioned Colin Oliver. This was his first year playing a stand-up linebacker role. He'd always been a defensive end, usually with hand on the ground, coming off the edge. They still used him off the edge, but he was standing up and doing some different things and playing a more traditional linebacker type of role. And, Nick Martin was really the big surprise of this team, even compared to Ollie Gordon, who goes and wins the Doak Walker on the offensive side. Nick Martin, there was less known about him in preseason than there was Ollie Gordon. We thought Ollie had a chance to be a pretty talented player, having covered him. So Nick was a big surprise at middle linebacker, and then you look at guys like Kendall Daniels, who he's playing that middle safety, which is critically important in the 3-3-5 defense, and he had some growing pains and hit some moments where you could tell he was learning. So he should be past a lot of that next season. And at 6'4", 220, he is a really dangerous player in the middle of that defense and a talented playmaker. So many guys are coming back in that secondary that it really is going to feel very comfortable to the majority of the guys on the field. There's only a couple of spots where they're going to have to plug in some inexperienced or less experienced guys. So it's a really important off season for Brian Nardo to go into spring and be ready to make the changes necessary to take this team to the next level defensively next season, because he had a really good year. Even though his numbers don't necessarily show it, he was really good at adjusting in game. That was probably the biggest strength that he showed this season. But the overall package certainly needs to get better. They were, they were not a top 100 defense in the NCAA.
So with Gordon and Bowman and Oliver and Daniels and so on and so forth. Where does that sort of leave them in terms of questions about the roster and guys making decisions? What's left out there, if anything?
Yeah, no, not a lot. There were a couple of guys that have super senior years available that haven't made public announcements. It sounds like both of those guys are going to be coming back. That's Corey Black at corner, which there was lots of speculation about where he might end up. Of course, with his little brother being recruited as heavily as he was, that they might try to play together for a year. All sorts of things. Yeah, Corey could probably still try to jump to the NFL at this point. I think he's got that kind of talent to be a draftable guy right now, but he might want to come back and finish it out. If he sticks around, that gives you a really strong corner on one side, and then some experienced guys that were kind of rotational players on the other corner. Trey Rucker, another safety that hasn't made any announcement about a super senior year. As far as filling holes, defensive end is going to be the big one. They're going to need to add a guy or two in the portal probably, and they've got a few offers out right now. And then outside linebacker, where Xavier Benson just finished up his eligibility. That's a spot they're going to have to find a new starter there, but they've got some guys that were in the rotation that they feel pretty comfortable with if they don't identify somebody who can really come in and be a difference maker. So, and then on the offensive side, really tight end, they landed one out of the portal today, a kid from Ohio, and other than that, the toughest thing on the offensive side of the ball is going to be finding somebody. They would like to get a veteran running back, but the guys, you're telling the guy you're going to come in and back up the best running back in the country for a year at least. So it's going to be hard for them to go into the portal probably and get a guy who's maybe only got a couple of years left to come in and be your backup running back.
Scott, quarterback wise, after Alan Bowman, he's not been the healthiest dude in his career overall, though he did make it through this year, which was great news for him and the program. What do they intend to do behind him? Because you see them going and getting a young guy that could step in 2025 to replace Alan Bowman, or are they happy with the guys on the roster?
They're really happy with the guys on the roster. The big question with the quarterback situation, as far as the young guys, will be answered in May when the portal opens again. Because with Alan Bowman's news not coming out until yesterday after the portal had closed, you wonder what that means for a guy like Garrett Rangel, who is he's going to be a redshirt sophomore, but he's the next oldest guy behind Bowman. He's the only other one with any college experience, and he's be going into his third season at Oklahoma State. He got to start a couple of games in 2022. Got a little bit of a taste of things. Does he want to go and test the portal? That'll be the question. Zane Flores is a guy who just redshirted this season as a freshman that they really like. Really excited about what he could be. But if he's getting impatient, he could be a guy that tries to explore something in the portal. They just signed Milwaukee Smith, a really talented recruit out of Northern California that they really like. A big 6'4", 220-pound guy that. He's athletic, but not necessarily a running type guy, but more of a pocket passer who can move around a little bit. So, he's a guy that they feel like has some potential there as well. So they've got a trio of young guys that they really like and are really excited about. We'll just see who decides to stick around after they go through spring ball and kind of get an idea of where they stand.
So, Scott, they win their bowl game, get to 10 wins, second time in the last 3 years for the Cowboys. And, Gundy's now accomplished that multiple times throughout his long tenure there in Stillwater. That's obviously a big deal to get to 10 wins. That's a great mark. But what was it like to see them go and face A&M and knowing that, bowl games there's a lot of variables in play. You're not, facing everybody at their very best per se, but to see an old rival who's over there in the SEC now to finish with 10 wins by beating the Aggies, was much to do about that, and just kind of what was the feel about the bowl game itself and getting that win?
Yeah, there was a lot of stock put in that 10-win mark. That is a number, and obviously, when you have a season like this, you play 14 games, it certainly helps your odds of getting to 10. But it's still an important number. It only happened twice in Oklahoma State football history before Mike Gundy did it back in 2010. He's done it now 8 times since then. So it is an important number and was really valuable to this program. They were really concerned about going and getting that, and obviously the way bowl games have become, if you're not playing in the playoffs, it's the bowl game is really kind of a springboard into next season and seeing what you've got. And with so many guys that they either knew they were going to have back at that point of the game or thought they would, like with Bowman. It was really important to kind of have this launching pad into 2024 because they really have high hopes for what this group can do. We saw what they were capable of down the stretch in the season, and you add another year all together, and you have a chance to really do something special with this group. So it was an important game, and like you mentioned, Texas A&M. That used to be a huge game for Oklahoma State when it was a Big 12 game, especially in the Mike Gundy era. So really big deal and a really fun one down there in Houston, which is is starting to become an area that Oklahoma State's recruiting a little bit more. They kind of quit that whenever A&M left to the SEC, but then once Houston was coming back into the league, then it changed their view a little bit of maybe going down there and trying to get some guys.
Scott, just out of curiosity, because that game was really controlled by Oklahoma State the whole time, but when A&M started to chip away and Marcel Reed started to get a little comfortable, was there a little nervousness in the pit of anyone's stomach that it could get weird?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. When particularly with Marcel Reed showing some of the skills that he did, and, taking off and running. Obviously, Oklahoma State was not prepared for a running quarterback coming into that game. And he obviously hurt them a little bit there, but his consistency throwing the ball, you started to kind of look up and he's piling up some numbers and you're like, hey, this Oklahoma State defense better figure some things out. And, they were able to do just enough to hold on. And, Ollie Gordon got going, got him a touchdown late and they were able to close it out. But you definitely felt like it could get a little bit crazy down the end.
Absolutely. Well, Scott, thank you so much for jumping on with us. Scott Wright of the Oklahoman. Appreciate the time, Scott. We'll talk to you again soon.
You bet. See you, fellas.
Scott Wright, the Oklahoman, with us. Yeah, Oklahoma State, it's interesting.